everyone, and welcome to this webinar on green and inclusive solid waste management. This is the second event of the World Bank Knowledge Sharing Series on low carbon and climate smart cities, a joint initiative of the World Bank Global Practices of Urban Disaster Risk Management, Resilient and Land and Environment, and the Natural Resources and the Blue Economy. My name is Victor Mulas, and I'm the team lead of the Tokyo Development Learning Center, the organizer of this series. TDLC is a partnership between the World Bank and the government of Japan that serves as a global hub of Japanese global urban development knowledge and technical expertise for practical operationalization. In today's event, we have an exciting lineup of speakers and topics, showcasing good and emerging practices anchored by two core themes. The first one, practices and initiatives for green and inclusive solid waste management in Japan. And the second one, taking an integrated approach to managing solid waste, lessons from developing countries. Before we begin, please let me make a few housekeeping announcements. This webinar offers English and Japanese simultaneous translation. The first session will be in Japanese and the second session will be in English. Please select the language of your choice by clicking the interpretation tool, which is the globe icon on the tool menu of Zoom. Throughout the webinar, should you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat space, as we will have a Q&A at the end of each presentation. Please feel free to post your questions in either Japanese or English. The TDLC master chat will bring your questions to the speaker and moderator. And finally, please note that this event will be recorded, and the recordings will be available for all to access in the TDLC website after the event. Now, let's get started with today's program. Today, we are very grateful to have Mona Sur to provide the opening remarks for this event. Mona is the practice manager of the East Asia and Pacific region of the World Bank Environment, Natural Resources and Blue Economy Global Practice. Please allow me to invite Mona to the floor and share her video and audio. Mona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor, and good afternoon and good evening, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining this knowledge sharing series on low carbon and climate smart cities. This is the second installment of the series. Today, we will be exploring how emerging energy efficient practices in solid waste management can help make cities greener and more sustainable. This knowledge sharing series aims to share practical experience and emerging trends from Japan and other countries on developing low carbon and climate smart cities, and aims to facilitate an exchange of knowledge and experience between urban and environmental practitioners and a broader audience of civic leaders, private sector partners, and other stakeholders. This event leverages the unique expertise through collaboration between the World Bank's Urban Disaster Risk Management, Resilience and Land Global Practice and the Environment and Natural Resources and Blue Economy Global Practice. I would like to express my gratitude to the government of Japan through the efforts of the World Bank Tokyo Development Learning Center program that have made this event possible. I would also like to extend my great appreciation to all the speakers and moderators here today. We have a very rich lineup of speakers and moderators, including an official from the city of Kitakyushu, an expert of the Institute of Global Environmental Strategies, and various World Bank experts. According to a recent World Bank report, cities around the world generate around 2 billion tons of waste every year. But with accelerated urbanization, waste generation is expected to increase by 70% to 3.4 billion tons by 2050. Moving towards modern, integrated, and sustainable solid waste management systems at affordable cost requires urgent action from governments and other stakeholders. The mismanagement of waste makes cities more vulnerable to flooding, air pollution, generating greenhouse gas emissions, and contributes to the growing global problem of marine plastics pollution. Waste generation is also more concentrated in cities, and consequently, a significant number of people are at risk of these impacts. In low-income countries, over 90% of waste is dumped openly and is untreated because of inadequate disposal mechanisms, treatment facilities, and the lack of necessary funds to finance waste management services. Therefore, enhancing stakeholders' understanding of waste reduction, reuse, and halting waste littering is required to support more cost-effective waste management infrastructure and reduce littering in the environment. While setting up effective waste management can be expensive, waste can also serve as a valuable resource. Proper waste segregation, collection, treatment, and disposal help maximize recycling, allow the waste to turn into new products. Waste can also be converted into energy instead of being landfilled. Cities worldwide have already begun to take measures to update their waste management practices and strengthen local policies and institutions to mitigate the environmental damage stemming from waste. Still, it remains a challenge for many developing countries. As cities gradually begin to open up from the current COVID-19 pandemic, allocating resources to improve waste management can significantly contribute to ensuring a green and resilient environment that can help attract investments, create jobs, and support economic recovery. I hope that today's participants can take advantage of this excellent learning opportunity to reflect on the challenges of your various cities and draw on the opportunities to apply different solutions to your projects and the various contexts that you are working with. Thank you, and back over to you, Victor.
Thank you, Mona, for kicking us off and for welcoming our participants. Now we're going to move to our first session, Waste to Energy Solutions in Japan, a case study from the city of Kitakyushu. Kitakyushu is a leader in developing a sound material cycle society and has comprehensive policy initiatives to support low-carbon city development. The moderator of this session is Mr. Siko Hayashi. Hayashi-san is the program director at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, and he is specialized in international resource circulation, sustainable 3R policies, and low-carbon city planning. I would like now to invite Hayashi-san to the stage to introduce our first session and our speakers. For our English-speaking audience, the first session will be in Japanese. So once again, please select English in the interpretation tool, which is the globe mark in the Zoom menu. Without further ado, Hayashi-san, over to you.
Thank you very much, Victor. So we have 25 minutes to do this session one. It's a waste to energy session. My name is Hayashi from IJETS Kitakyushu office. Today's speaker is Mr. Takanori Arima, Executive Director, Overseas Environmental Project Department of Kitakyushu Asian Center for Low Carbon City, Environment Bureau City of Kitakyushu. And Mr. Arima learned development economics in the university, and in 1988 he joined Kitakyushu office. He promoted industry and also supported overseas students in the city, and also he was engaged in urban development over 30 years. In terms of environmental administration, since 2017, he became in charge. In order to promote sustainable development in Kitakyushu, he was in charge of acting global warming prevention measures, regional energy demand and supply promotion, and environmental recycling industry promotion last fiscal year. Currently, he is responsible for promoting overseas projects, forging city-to-city networks, and strengthening cooperation with international organizations such as JICA, OECD, and the World Bank in the environmental field. I would like to call upon Mr. Takanori Arima to talk about the decarbonization of Kitakyushu and other relevant initiatives.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hayashi. This is Arima from city of Kitakyushu. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to make presentation, and I'd like to appreciate this to the World Bank. So today I'm going to talk about the decarbonization using waste to energy solutions. I will talk about 4 points. One is Kitakyushu's growth and relationship with energy. And then second, I will talk about our measures in decarbonization and waste to energy initiatives in the other countries. And I will also talk about, in order to promote decarbonization, we are collaborating with World Bank. What kind of things are we thinking about? So let me talk about the outline of Kitakyushu. As you can see from this map, Kitakyushu is located in between Shanghai and the capital of Japan, Tokyo. So there are a lot of manufacturing companies located in Kitakyushu. Our Kitakyushu is located near Asia, and from 1900s, there has been port and also the railroad network. And in 1901, the first imperial steel work, Yawata Steel, was established. And so it's one of the 4 industrial areas in Japan. And in that process, from the middle of 1950s, as you can see, we suffered from a heavy air pollution. Right now, there is blue sky and blue ocean in Kitakyushu. So how did we overcome pollution? So for the first time, it was the families, the wives of the factory workers who raised their voice. And they learned from college professors, and they went to the city, municipal, and companies with the result of the researches. And the companies, they introduced environmental monitoring facilities, and they came up with energy solution saving So as we have accumulated measures to fight with pollution, that led to our new initiative. This is a data by the World Bank. At that time, the air pollution reforms, some people viewed it as measures against economic growth. However, the economic growth came in tandem with the environmental solutions. So we were able to obtain both environmental conservation and economic growth. There are 2 ways to do that. One is energy conservation, and also it's called the free up production. And using the waste reduction pipes, that's another measure to reduce pollution. Now I'm going to talk about our initiative towards decarbonization. So just like the developing countries, the Kitakyushu, it's a big challenge to realize low carbon energy society. And we would like to have a positive cycle of becoming zero carbon city. And I think it's really meaningful to attain this. So last year in October 29, we declared commitment to zero carbon city. So this is the decarbonization image in Japan. So electricity and source of electricity, we will try to compress it, and we need a new source of energy. So we need to reduce CO2. So using renewable energy becomes important. So from this year, we are going to power all public facilities with 100% renewable energy by 20 2025. So this is really a speedy measure, just like the global companies. And also, we will promote renewable energy throughout the city. We will get all this renewable energy within our city. And then power all the public facilities by renewable energy. We will use biomass and mega solar and onshore wind. Waste to energy, we are reconstructing waste to energy facility to a bigger one. So it's one of the important energy source. And also, we are thinking of storage batteries and also using solar panels. So the whole city will have more capability in the storage battery in order to cope with the renewable energy vulnerability. So we have a Kitakyushu Energy Town. So using the electric storage batteries, we will try to have more affordable electricity. And I will talk about waste to energy initiative, those initiatives with other countries. So in environmental technologies, from 1985, we have been conducting international cooperation. So in 2010, we established an organization called Kitakyushu Asia Center for Low Carbon Society. It's a public and private partnership. So in 16 countries, in 75 cities, we have more than 190 projects. So we have procured 18.8 billion yen since 2010. So it's all the environmental projects.
With regard to the cleaner project production and pipe, in addition to that, recycle and waste treatment, and also the sewage treatment, the water business technology, all those technologies related to environment are accumulated in Kitakyushu. In addition to those technologies, we have various efforts made to roll out our technology across the world, and especially with emphasis on energy. With regard to the waste to energy, we are focusing on the disposal site issues and also the waste heat reuse, and also good relationship with the civil society and development of new business models. So to these purposes, we have started our efforts 40 years ago. As for the generation in the city, the private sector's technology is leveraged upon, so the public and the private partnership is in place. More specifically, we collect and transport the waste, and also we build the plant, and then operation for 20 years. All those tasks are outsourced to the private sector. With regard to the waste to energy technology, we are introducing it to overseas cities such as Davao in the Philippines. So as they develop their economy, they see an increase in their waste generation. So the Philippines has asked us to deliver the technology. So we have started the efforts to provide a grant aid in March 2018. So in order to improve the efficiency of generation, the salt segregation and also collection and transportation areas are looked at to improve the efficiency through the public and private cooperation. Finally, envisioning our collaboration with the World Bank is a topic I would like to focus and cover. So in 2017, we have started the partnership with World Bank. We joined the CPP program. So we build the relationship with this major international organization to reinforce our functions and also to improve the brand value of the Kitakyushu city. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the World Bank for their cooperation. For the low carbon society realization, together with the World Bank and Asian friends, we would like to develop more technology and then harvest the benefits. So we also have intergovernmental dialogues in the environmental development field. We have to attain an understanding from the civil society as we promote our efforts. Therefore, the municipality's role in this field is quite important. And also, we have a lot of expertise to share in order to build a bridge between the developing countries and our city. We hope to get support from the international organization as well as from the Japanese government, and the World Bank is one of the international organizations. We certainly would like to reinforce our cooperation. So how can we collaborate with the World Bank? In our city, we have a project with the Han Phong city of Vietnam. Since 1996, we started supporting them, starting with the water business. And in 2015, we have developed the master plan to promote growth, green growth of this city, and decarbonization, green growth, and also the environmental and economic issues are covered under this master plan. And also, we have a track record with a city in Cambodia, and I hope that we could contribute based on our experiences with those cities in Asia in terms of a relationship with the World Bank. We also have other know-hows that we can share in order to sustainably build the decarbonization mechanism. We can provide technical support and also institutional support and support for education and training. Hopefully, we can continue our cooperation with the World Bank in order to have a virtuous cycle of environment and economy. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arima. In a limited time, you explained about how you are doing the waste to energy and other energy conservation. Before going into Q&A, let me just summarize Mr. Arima's presentation. First point, Kitakyushu City has many industries such as steel industries. And so there's a basic relation with energy consumption in order to support those industries. And in the process of overcoming air pollution through public and partnership collaboration, there was thorough energy conservation and cleaner production. And so they improved the air pollution, but also made their economic growth. So this has become a good virtuous cycle of economy and environment and enhancing the value of the city. And also decarbonization measure in Kitakyushu is the same as the direction of Japan's measure. By 2025, they will use all the public facilities by renewable energy, 100% renewable energy by 2025. And also, in order to have stable use of renewable energy, they have the storage system all over the town. And also, in order to secure renewable energy, waste to energy is one of the important electric resource. I just member Low Carbonization Asia Center plays the main role in bringing this to overseas waste to energy through public partnership collaboration. So they have collaboration. They want to strengthen the collaboration with Asian cities. So now we would like to move on to Q&A. We have some questions from at the chat box. Thank you for your question. First question. Can I ask the question, Mr. Arima? So Kitakyushu's this good virtuous cycle between environment and economy, this was very impressive decarbonization measures. To realize this, how are you collaborating with the private sector, public-private sector collaboration? Can you explain?
再エネにつきましては、
Yes, as for renewable energy, there's a Japanese system. That is, now they are having a liberalization of electricity. So the transmission and generation in Japan, it's all segregated. And we had the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. And then the electricity retail companies were established. And we have a Kitakyushu Power Company. We established the company in order to promote renewable energy. So this is a very important point. So the electricity rate, so there's a competition over getting customers. We had lower electricity price now. Utilizing this power company, we had the voltaic power or the wind power, but if it's owned by individuals, it's costly. So this power company owns those facilities. So it's the third-party ownership. Through this system, the citizens are using the system. They don't need any initial investment. So we are switching from ownership to using the facilities. It's a circular economy. I think we are promoting circular economy. That's becoming popular around the world. And as for renewable energy, we have the offshore wind power. We are in 2 years' time, we hope that we can have 220,000 kilowatt of generation through wind. And the storage system, we want to lower the fuel cell price, and private sector is taking the lead. That's how we are collaborating with the private companies.
Thank you very much for that. We received some questions in our chat box. Mr. Arima has talked about how to reduce the cost as they promote the private and public partnership to promote renewable energy. So you are targeting the 100% renewable energy model, and various measures are taken in accordance with your presentation. However, how would you try to make transition to renewable energy by 2025? But how can it be supported financially? What is the budgeting at the city level? With regard to the waste to energy initiatives in the city, so we have waste, and we collect them from the wide area. So in terms of the construction cost, we can receive financial support from the government. So we leverage on the subsidies from the government, and also we consider the durability, the life of the treatment plant, the generation plant. So we are exploring various governmental supports. As for the overseas project, we have ODA that we can tap upon. Thank you. So you use the support from the government, financial support from the government, and also you have your own initiatives going on in the city. So you combine various tools available. I think we have another question in terms of the waste to energy power generation. So you have a public and private partnership. So you closely work with the private sector, you explained in the presentation. But what about the cooperation with the civil society, with citizens? Can you supplement the information? Yes, the waste can be generated by the citizens. Therefore, we need to work with citizens as well. So from our perspective, we are the local government, so we have a day-to-day interaction with the citizens. So communication and dialogue with citizens are very important, especially as I mentioned when I talked about Davao of the Philippines, the waste-to-energy technology to be efficient, it is very important that waste segregation is implemented properly. Therefore, there are some tools that we can use, such as the smartphone apps. So we create some kind of the reference list the citizens can look into as they segregate the waste. And I just at your office, Hayashi-san, is doing that at the school. They are putting a lot of focus on environmental education. So the school education in this environment field is quite useful because the children, once they go home, they can talk to the parents about the importance of the waste segregation. We have been focusing on education for many, many years. So from the perspective of education, we are trying to improve the waste segregation. So you have overcome the pollution. So you use that experience to communicate with the citizens. And also you provide a reference list for the citizens to segregate the waste.
So the public partnership initiative was very impressive. So ultimately, this measure will be, we hope that it will be used in other cities. But history or historical industrial structure might be a factor, and I thought that this is possible because it's Kitakyushu. So in order for other cities to adopt this, what kind of obstacles will there be, and how will they be able to overcome this? Probably industrial cities, there's not so many. Well, we are promoting renewable energy, and it's better to do that in a wider area. So to supply renewable energy, we're not just doing it to Kitakyushu, but we want also supply renewable energy to cities around Kitakyushu. So we have 17 cities and towns that we collaborate with in order to promote renewable energy. So in Japan, big cities will probably play the role to promote renewable energy involving the surrounding municipalities. And there are a lot of commercial cities, not just industrial cities, and it's important for those cities to take the initiative. Then I think this will become a nationwide measure.
So in the area of 3 Rs, the Kitakyushu City is taking initiative as they work with the 17 municipalities within the Kitakyushu metropolitan area. So thank you very much for your explanation. We have covered 5-6 questions so far, and I believe we have covered most of the questions on the table. So I think it's about time to close session 1. Mr. Arima, thank you very much for your very comprehensive presentation as well as your response to questions. It was very easy to understand explanation. Thank you very much. Now I would like to return the microphone to Victor. Victor, please.
Thank you very much, Arima-san and Hayashi-san, for sharing the cutting-edge examples of Kitakyushu City's work on low-carbon city development and waste to energy. We are very honored to have Kitakyushu City as a member of TDLC City Partnership Program, and we are very grateful for your participation in this event. Now, let's shift our focus on the international case. In India, a World Bank-funded project on solid waste management has drawn key considerations and lessons learned from taking an integrated state-wide approach to address waste problems and environmental hazards. The moderator of this session is Barjor Mehta, lead urban specialist at the World Bank Urban Disaster Risk Management, Resilient and Land Global Practice. Barjor is based in Singapore and has close to 40 years of experience working on a wide range of aspects on the urban sector across the world. I would like now to invite Barjor to introduce our next session. Barjor, if you can share the video, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. And first and foremost, let me thank Arima-san and Hayashi-san for a wonderful presentation. And this was really enlightening, and I learned a lot. I have been personally to Kitakyushu very early in the days when TDLC was formed, and I was very highly impressed with the way the city has managed its environmental issues. Now, let me move to introduce the next session. You would see the difference between the two countries. You have Japan, which is roughly at about $40,000 US per capita income in today's days. And then you have India, which is at about roughly a little lower than 2,000 per capita income, which is 20 times lower. So, but the pressures of population are very high because of the high population density, and particularly in the state of Kerala, which is on the southwest coast of the country. And there we have the World Bank has been very fortunate to work with the state government to set up a program on waste management, which is not just a city focus, but it is a regional for the entire state of Kerala, which is very important because Kerala is a very long and narrow state and has very concentrated development along a linear development where there is no distinction between urban and rural. And there, Uri Reich, who is going to make the presentation, was the leader of the team which set up the project. Uri has a very long experience in the bank. He has a PhD from the MIT, and he has worked very closely in Africa, in South Asia, and now he's based here in Singapore, and he will make that presentation. We are also very lucky to have Jafar Freya. He is our practice manager for the World Bank for the MENA region, which is the Middle East and North Africa region. He's currently based in Lebanon, in Beirut, and he has also very long experience in the bank and outside in his native country of Tunisia in the water and the environment sector, and he will be the discussant. So without going in much further, I would ask Uri to make his presentation, and then I will request Jafar to provide his comments, and then I will request questions and answers and maybe close the session. So Uri, please.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, so as Barjor has just said, this presentation is about the Kerala Solid Waste Management Program. This is a new program recently prepared, so let me just take you to the long journey that was to come up with this. So Kerala is situated in the southern part of India. It has 35 million people, and about 50% of people live in urban areas. It's a state that is very rapidly urbanizing, and it has about 3 times the population density of India as a whole. Kerala is a very decentralized state, so cities and local governments take on lots of responsibilities. Nevertheless, there's still enormous challenges in terms of service delivery. In addition to that, Kerala is very prone to floods. And in 2018, the state went through very severe floods. So it's a very highly decentralized state. And the floods of 2018 really called to attention that waste is really indeed a very important problem. And this is really the reason why the state of Kerala was very interested in partnering with the World Bank to try to sort out the issue. So let me just briefly show to you what is the nature and the scale of the problem of waste in the state. So as you can see from this little diagram over here, municipalities generate about 3,750 tons of waste per day, out of which 80% is biodegradable and 20% is non-biodegradable. Out of the portion of the biodegradable, only about 20% of that is being treated, either at household or at community levels, and the remaining 80% is not properly treated and disposed. So this is what is shown here in the green areas. Likewise, 60% of the non-biodegradable waste is dumped illegally or burned, while the remaining waste is collected informally by rag pickers. Only a minor fraction is recycled at community level. Collection and transportation is done by local associations, primarily for plastics that go to storage and sorting at material collection facilities, and later on to the resource recovery facilities. The state has no landfill or centralized waste management facility for municipal waste. Consequently, a major fraction of municipal waste have been openly dumped in public spaces or low-lying lands and water bodies for many years now, resulting in the creation of numerous illegal open dump sites that pose serious environment and public hazard risks. As a result of this situation, about 75% of the water sources in Kerala are contaminated. In solid waste management from household markets and hotels is the largest source of pollution of about 52%. So in a nutshell, what you can see here, and I'll show this in the next slide, we're in a situation in which really very, very small fraction of the waste is properly handled. So we're dealing with a situation in which there's no integrated solution to deal with the issues of waste. So as you can see over here, and I'm not going to get into the details of this, but it's important if you can focus on the red boxes. This is parts of the system in which there is really no service whatsoever that is being provided thus far to treat waste. So on the biodegradable side, as I've explained, there's a huge gap in the sense that there is no public service really for the provision to deal with the biodegradable waste. Most of it is being treated at a household level through small-scale composting or at some community level. So there's a huge gap in terms of providing a public service to deal and manage the bio-waste. And in terms of the non-bio waste, the situation is very precarious as well. It's a very simple system in which some of the using community level organizations, some of the waste is being collected and transported to collection points, which are called material collection facilities, for then transportation to the resource recovery facilities for some sort of sorting and recycling of plastics mostly. But the remaining of the waste, there's really no proper disposal facility for final treatment and disposal. And there is a number of organizations involved in the process, which also creates some type of tension. We can get a little bit into that into the Q&A if there's interest on that. And in terms of the revenue stream, a very fragmented system of financing in which there's really massive needs in the sector. The state as a whole allocates about $50 per capita on transfers that go from the state to the cities. And just so you have an idea, out of those 50%, only $1.5 are being allocated to waste. And out of that, only 50 cents of a dollar is actually being spent on waste. So that gives you an idea of the very dire situation that is being faced by the state. So this is the problem that we encountered. So let me just quickly try to share with you how did we come with a program that really tried to fix or help alleviate the problems of these two red boxes that I've shown to you. So this program covers all the 93 cities in the state, which, as I said before, it's about 50% of the population. This is a $300 million project for an implementation of 6 years, and is being implemented both at state and city level. So there's one component which provides really all the capacity, the technical assistance and capacity to the state and the cities to really run the program. And it's a very expensive and elaborated system through which there is a program unit which will support the different activities envisioned by the program, including a very ambitious formal and training and awareness generation program, and a number of very specific technical assistance activities at state and city level. Then we have a component, which is the city level component, which is a system. I'll explain that in the next slide. It's a system through which all cities will be able to tap on the resources of the program to start financing some of the basic activities of the program itself at the city level. And finally, we have a last component, which we call the state level component, which focuses much more on the regional facilities, mostly in the rehabilitation of existing dump sites and in the creation of scientific landfills. So how is the modus operandi of the program? And one of the huge challenges that we faced, and by no means is specific to Kerala itself, is how to design a project that really reaches out to many cities, in this case, basically all the cities in the state. So we came up with a program, which is a results-based financing program, through which we provide, the program will provide resources to all the participating cities in the following way. By just signing a project participation agreement and agreeing to the basic rules of the game, so to speak, in terms of fiduciary compliance and the like, each city will have access to about 40% of the grant itself. The next 40% we call the incentive grants, and in order for cities to be able to access those grants, they have to comply with 3 conditions. And those are the following. First, to prepare a 5-year citywide plan for solid waste management. And this is really very important because the way the budget and the planning cycle works in the state, which is common to many other developing countries, is on an annual basis. So prior to this operation, the World Bank was engaged in a development policy lending program with the state, through which they passed a new solid waste management strategy. And we managed actually to amend the planning cycle at the city level in the state by allowing multi-year planning. So this means that the funds being provided from this program will be able to be planned for the 5 years of the duration of the project, which is a very huge change and shift in the way the annual planning is usually being done. In addition to that, each city must issue bylaws that is in compliance to the guidelines of the solid waste management policy. That's one just recently adopted in 2020, and that there's access for final disposal of waste. And this is very important, and I will get to that in a minute, because Kerala is a state that has really not that much availability of land. So we had to come up with very innovative solutions to have enough land, basically, for the final disposal of the waste. And lastly, just to mention very briefly, there's somewhere 20% of a bonus, if you will, of resources that cities will get if they comply with the following conditions, which is to hire 2 top-level solid waste management staff. We're thinking here about mostly environmental engineers, to sign performance-based contracts for collection and transportation with community organizations, and to have a system in place to levy of user charges for the operation and maintenance of the service, and finally to have implemented a monitoring and evaluation system. So just to give you a flavor of the types of activities that the program aims to support. So on the very upstream part, we are looking into expanding and strengthening the decentralized bio-waste treatment systems which are already in place, improve the efficiency of waste segregation, providing regular waste collection services for all household services. At the moment, this is being done in a very haphazard way by community organizations, mostly composed by women. So the idea is really to try to formalize, regularize, and expand the waste collection services of those community organizations, and by no means to try to replace them, but to incorporate them and even the informal sector, which plays a very fundamental role in the sector, into the primary collection. Also to provide financial assistance for the purchase of equipment and vehicles for community organizations, and to enhance the livelihood opportunities to training, skilling, and improved health and safety standards for these employees that mostly work at the moment in the primary collection service. In the midstream, the idea is to still work through the existing system of supporting the creation, of supporting the existing municipal material center facilities and the resource recovery facilities as well by improving their technology and their infrastructure to provide better options for maintenance of the facilities of those facilities to ensure their cleanliness and hygiene, and also to ensure that there's upstream and downstream linkages to ensure limited storage time at the facilities and to prevent the accumulation of waste by improving the times in which they move out from the MFCs to the RRFs, and improve the transportation linkage between these two. And lastly, on the downstream, the idea would be to create city-level bio-waste treatment facilities which are suited for local conditions. We're also looking into the co-processing of non-recyclables, for instance, in cement factories through RDFs and the like. We're also, especially in the face of COVID, supporting the creation of facilities to manage biomedical waste that has increased in volumes tremendously, like in many other countries, and also support the construction and demolition waste, which at the moment the state does not have any C&D facilities. Finally, we're also looking into the rehabilitation and remediation of existing dump sites for environmental improvement and land reclamation. And this is very important because, as I said before, there's really a lot of land available for fresh greenfield developments for landfills. So there needs to be some type of a remediation of the existing dump sites, at least as an intermediate measure for the increasing waste to have a proper place for final disposition and treatment. And lastly, the development of regional engineered landfills for the safe disposals of the rejects and inert waste as well. So just to finish up here, I think I'm getting close to my 15 minutes. Just to mention what is being done in terms of the service itself. So we have an end-to-end solution, which is comprehensive service delivery approach for all the ULBs in the state. So the approach was kind of like a big bang to try to address the whole value chain at all levels, big cities and small cities as well. There's a dual centralized and decentralized approach. There is still a high reliance on the household and community solutions, and we are adding the regional facilities on top of that. There's an incremental financial and institutional sustainability plan, which is linked to these 5-year plans that I have mentioned about. And there's also incremental institutional and organizational strengthening for the waste functions at both city and state levels. So in terms of, just one last slide in terms of energy efficient practices and the like. So as I said before, Kerala is a multi-hazard state. Solid waste management has contributed to the floods through clogging. There's high temperatures that have created lots of burning, and there's actually quite a lot of air pollution as well. The program is supporting a number of both adaptation and mitigation measures. On the adaptation side, through this policy lending that preceded this operation, we managed to approve new guidelines for handling the waste, which actually are resilient infrastructure and planning. So there's new regulations of where to set up the new facilities to be, far away from water bodies and the like. And there is a very strong IEC component following the 3R approach. On the mitigation side, basically what we are trying to do is a number of activities. We use the core mechanism by estimating the GHG impact for the program. As we know, waste is this was mentioned briefly in the previous presentation of tissue, which is basically about 5% of emissions comes from waste. So there's a number of methane capture activities that actually can be undertaken. So the number of interventions that this program is proposing to do is expected to have a reduction of about 500,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. So in a nutshell, this is what we are trying to address. It's, as I said, a very comprehensive end-to-end program that has a number of challenges, and I'll be more than happy to get into some of the details in the Q&A. So let me stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Uri. And may I request Jafar to give his remarks, please?
Thank you so much, Barger, and thanks, Yuri, for this excellent presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Yuri, you started basically by saying it was a long journey. You are absolutely right, and I don't think that Kerala is an exception. Municipal solid waste in general is a very complex, very challenging one. Why? Because it's a multi-dimension and multi-stakeholder sector, but at the same time, because it has its economic, its environment, and its social dimension. I do remember Barger, during the introduction, he made reference to this impact on water resources and the environment. This is basically the environmental dimension. But we know also, although sometimes doesn't appear in the book of the municipal or of the state budget, this sector is consuming a lot of resources, which means that there is always a very poor value of money, which calls for a better cost effectiveness of the system. And more important, I think, most of the local government, and I think the case of Kerala is another good example, that there was always a very limited effort, attention, and resources dedicated to this sector. Why? Simply because most of the municipalities are much more focusing on the collection services for obvious, of course, reasons, while disposal and treatment is left behind, which translate to a big negative externalities, again, in terms of environment, economy, and social. So thank you so much, Yuri. I think the approach that you identified and you implemented for this, I would call program, not project, integrated, but also incremental. I think that's why the long-term commitment of the government at different level, and here maybe it's at the state, but also at the city government level, it's very, very important. And I assume by putting in place a kind of relationship between the state and the city through this incentive mechanism that you created, it's basically what you created also in Morocco between the center and local government. It really pays off. And why it pays off? Because it helps basically dealing with both, with the municipal service as a system, where the municipalities need to show some performance vis-a-vis their citizens. But at the same time, it helps the government it helps the government to influence the city action in this sector so they can pay attention to this always left behind segment, which is disposal, and which create a lot of negative externalities, whether in terms of value of money or in terms of job creation or in terms of climate change, etc., etc. So I think this integrated approach and incremental implementation of this approach is definitely the right way to go. Now, maybe I will just comment a little bit what kind of opportunity this sector can create and where maybe we need as a follow-up engagement, we need to focus a little bit more. The first is definitely to continue pushing for a more shift to a higher technology. I think we should keep in mind that landfilling is definitely an interim solution. Why? Because of the problem of accessing to land, but at the same time, whatever the engineering that we will mobilize for this kind of facility, there was always some environmental impacts and other social impact that we need really to mitigate. So keep in mind that this landfilling is definitely an interim solution, and maybe we should go more for a higher sophisticated technology, but at the same time, when it is affordable and taking advantage of all this development in terms of technology, including landfill gas to electricity, waste to energy, etc. The second point is definitely the incentive that we need to create to minimize waste disposal and landfilling. I think this will be a sort of a win-win. On one way, upstream, when we will promote more recycling, we will reduce the volume of waste that will go to the landfill, but at the same time, we will use this recyclable material as an input to what we call economic and green industry. It will create jobs, but more important, it will help you integrate what we call the informal waste pickers, right? And this is very, very important. The other point that I would like, this sector is among the most important sector when it comes to private sector participation. I have seen in your presentation that you were talking about this performance contract. I think this is the way to start, but I think we need to aim a little bit higher for this sector and go for more sophisticated private sector and public partnership. I'm thinking about the DBO, about PPP in general, etc. So the idea is take advantage of this project to create the foundation for a new market for private sector. And again, the private sector here, it will bring the know-how in terms of management and operation and technology, but at the same time can be really used. And we have many successful initiatives through the world. Private sector can also help the municipalities dealing with upfront costs, which always very high. The municipalities will not be able to mobilize this upfront cost. And so the private sector can also bring what we call the private capital investment in this sector. Let me now go a little bit deep in this incentive mechanism that you created. And congratulations once again. I think this is the most important thing. And I do remember you made reference that when you started diagnosing this sector, you couldn't find a system. And the system, we cannot create it overnight. The system is a long-term process. It will take some time, step by step, right? You are starting with the basic, which is great, but I think we should also aim a little bit higher in terms of incentives and in terms of eligibility criteria. And what I couldn't see in the eligibility criteria are the following. I think this sector is really lacking a lot in terms of accountability and transparency, which means accountability of the city to their citizen and firm, but also the accountability of the city to the state. I mean, here is the subnational, of course. And I think pushing a little bit and using and leveraging the high technology, the digital technology to create space where the citizen and the firms can express their views in terms of whether the quality or the adequacy of the service, it will push the municipalities and behind them, the private operator to deliver according to their basically contract requirement. This is number one. The second, transparency is also needed when it comes to contracting private sector. And we have seen that in many, many cases when a very simple measure is to basically disclose, of course, without all this keeping in mind the confidentiality that we need, disclose the large part of the private sector contract so the citizen can see what kind of contract the city has with the private sector. And this is another form of transparency that will improve the accountability of the private sector and of the city as well. The other element, and I think in terms of eligibility, this sector is very important to mitigate environmental risks and impact. But if it is not done properly, and if we don't have the environmental and the social safeguard in place, this may not be possible when it comes to the implementation. And what we have seen in other cases and in other countries, that in parallel with introducing this system, we also look at the environmental and social impact assessment that the country has and see if there is any gap that we need to fill. So we have a system in place that can not only mitigate the risk upstream, but also do all this inspection and control and help the cities basically managing their facilities in a very proper environmental and social manner. So it's very, very important. I know sometimes it's outside the control of the city. It's outside the control of the institution that they are involved in this sector. But I think this kind of the institution that they are in charge of the EIA system, important and worth to bring them on board at a very, very early stage. Now, one final point before maybe moving to some suggestion on how we can continue developing this sector in your cases, is about the informal sector, is about the waste pickers. In many countries, we have seen if we don't put in place the system to integrate and to help these waste pickers organizing themselves, being able to negotiate and to partner with both the municipalities and the private sector, it may become really a failure factor of the system. And so please keep this in mind and make sure that as part of the private sector contract, as part of the eligibility criteria, the municipalities pay special attention and come with an action plan how to integrate and how and what kind of role we should give to the waste pickers. And finally is about the inter-municipal cooperation. Maybe it's already in your project. You know, the objective is always to limit the number of landfills. And so in order to take advantage of the economic, the scale of the economy in this kind of investment, we need really to promote what we call the regional landfills. And so in that case, again, I think one incentive through this grant support is make sure that the municipalities do not come with their own landfill unless they explore the possibility to partner with other. And here you need a lot of technical support because the inter-municipality is one of the most complex issue because of the political economy, and everyone will not be very willing to accept the waste of others. Finally, I would put only one or two suggestions. I think this sector offers an excellent opportunity for job creation, for climate change, and for the private sector development, as I said at the beginning. So I think the second generation of support, we really have the chance to aim higher for the sector and position it not only as a sector to improve the quality of life and to reduce the environmental externalities, but as a sector that can really contribute to the post-COVID recovery when it comes to the economic and the social recovery. And of course, creating green jobs in a sector like solid waste, we have many good examples, not only in developed country, but in developing country. I know that Morocco, for example, they are targeting the creation of 60,000 jobs during the upcoming 10 years. This is a lot for a country like Morocco, where they are basically creating only 30,000 jobs countrywide from all the sector. Just to give you an idea about this opportunity. But again, Yuri, excellent approach, excellent progress. And I think this is the kind of cases that we need to share more and more with other regions, with other countries. Again, congratulations and well done. Let me stop here.
Thank you, Jafar. I think we may, just in the interest of time, what I will do is we have about 6 or 7 questions, but since we don't have much time, I'm going to combine some of them, and my apologies to the people who have posed the questions if I'm not able to use them independently. But Uri, one set of questions is about how do you look at the vulnerable areas and communities, particularly as Jafar mentioned on the issue of rag pickers, informal sector, and tied up with that is how have you envisaged in your program a system of including the existing system of the informal existing system of recycling, and does that find a place in your program or not? So that's one. So please answer that, and then I'll go to the next question. Thanks.
Great. First of all, thank you so much, Jafar. Excellent remarks. Shame we don't have time to go into details, but they were all excellent. Thank you so much. To the question, Barjor, One of the main reservations that the state had when we came in is they were very proud of the community level solutions that they had put in place. And that includes, by and large, the community-based organizations that are currently dealing with the waste, mostly on the primary collection service. So the agreement that was made is that we will preserve the existing system and we will enhance it by trying to shift it from the informal conditions in which the current workers operate to a much formal system in which there are more transparent performance-based contracts, in which there are better quality of service standards for the providers. At the moment, this is mostly done by women. The ones of you that know Kerala would know that it's a state in which it's a state that is really being run by women. They play an extremely important role in society, and they are the ones that actually are engaged in the system. In the interviews that we had with the associations, they are all very willing, of course, to move towards a more formalized type of jobs. So to go straight to answer the question, Roger, is yes, the idea would be to keep what there's already in place, but to enhance the standards of service by shifting them to more formal terms of servicing, by providing long-term contracts, better salaries, equipment standards, and the like. So this is the approach that we have taken.
Thank you. Now, there's another set of questions which that participants would like to know. What kind of indicators are being used to measure the impacts of solid waste management projects by the World Bank? And then are these linked to the SDGs?
Yeah, so we have a traditional results framework. There's about 12 or so indicators that vary all the way from the volume of waste that is being properly handled, all the way to the number of cities that access the grants. And if you remember all the conditions that we have put in for accessing the grants, those have actually also become indicators of the program. So how many cities, for example, have issued the 5-year solid waste management plans would be one of those. How many of them have set up a proper fee for solid waste management? How many cities have set up the bio-waste solutions? Those are the types of solutions that are there. This is public information, so whoever asks this question will have answers to that information. I'll be more than happy to share it. But this is the type of traditional indicators that we are using, both on results in terms of actually handling the quantities of waste, but also on the process of strengthening the institutions and the finances of the sector as a whole.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I really am sorry, but we are running close to the end of the period. So thank you very much, Uri, for your presentation. Thank you, Jafar, for excellent remarks and highlighting issues that we should be considering as we go forward. Now, there are other questions, but I'm sorry I can't take those right now. But so I hand it back to Victor so that he can ask Mark to give his closing remarks. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barger, and thank you, Jafar and Nuri, for showcasing Kerala's story and drawing insightful reflections and discussions. The lessons and key considerations you presented today are certainly applicable to many of our developing partners. To wrap up our discussions, I would like now to invite Mark Forney, the lead disaster risk management specialist of the World Bank, to share some of his reflections on the discussions we have had today. So, Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Victor, and to all of the participants and the presenters. The topic of solid waste management is something that has really generated a lot of interest over the last few years, in part from the World Bank's publication of the What a Waste 2.0 report that got a lot more traction in the media than most of our reports do. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. One is just the increasing level of development of countries and cities around the world that are just simply generating more waste. And this is becoming a more and more visible challenge. It's something that needs to be taken on more systematically and formalized more than it is in many different places. And the second element, perhaps, of the increased interest and focus on the topic is the relation to climate change. And the relation to climate change clearly in the benefits to climate mitigation in terms of how the waste is managed and treated at the end. But also, it's important to keep in mind the importance of managing waste to reduce flood risk in urban centers in particular. And being able to have good solid waste management practices that avoids the clogging of infrastructure meant to discharge water from cities during rainfall events is equally fundamental. And these factors of growing waste around the world with combined with the impacts that they're having on climate change really are driving a lot of interest from our clients' perspective, and I think internally within the World Bank. And I think the presentations did an excellent job, as well as Jafar's remarks following them, to deliver one really important message, which is this space is complicated and it's hard. There are a lot of actors, there's a lot of interest in this space, and it's something that we have to be intentional about engaging in and being systematic of engaging in that space. Because it's really an easy temptation to think that a solution to solid waste management is waste to energy. And this is only one piece of the overall ecosystem, and perhaps waste to energy isn't necessarily the right solution to that piece of treatment. And so when we take a step back and we think, okay, we at the World Bank, what are we best positioned to do to provide support to our clients around the world? I think we can summarize this in 3 real areas. Area number 1 is taking a systems approach and understanding the full value chain, from the waste generators to primary collection, to transfer and segregation, and then to treatment. Each of these areas has a whole different set of actors, and as Uri pointed out, a number of different institutions that are governing those different sectors. So without having a holistic perspective of the ongoing operations in each of these segments, as well as the bottlenecks that need to be overcome, both from an investment and policy perspective, a single investment isn't going to make a dent in the challenge that a city or a subnational government is facing. And it's really first taking a step back and understanding where interventions are necessary that is fundamental, and that we at the World Bank have quite a lot of experience in doing around the world. A second area, which is brought up by the presenters, is issues of environmental and social challenges and safeguards. So for example, how is it that cities can think about environmental remediation of existing dump sites, existing landfills, and existing pieces of the solid waste management ecosystem, and having due consideration to ensuring that these legacy investments or legacy assets are managed properly and don't create more long-term harm is an area that is fundamental to look at and can easily be overlooked when thinking about the new way forward. And second, which has been brought up by the presenters and the speakers as well, is the social impacts. And in many circumstances, the role of waste pickers in understanding how they are impacted and how they need to be supported is fundamental. And just to give one example, in Dakar in Senegal, a PPP contract was signed, and over a 10-year period, it didn't get implemented because there were complaints and challenges from the 3,000 to 5,000 waste pickers, depending on season, who made their livelihood from that system that exists currently before moving to a more formal system. So thinking about across a system, how can the social impacts of those negatively affected be managed is also fundamental to first ensure equity and inclusion, and second, to ensure the success of improvements to the system. So this is a second point. The third point, which was mentioned as well, is financing structures. Sometimes we oversimplify into, we do one PP transaction and we solve the problem, and that's also not the case. Thinking about the role of public capital, the role of, let's say, ODA capital, and the role of private capital is important to break down into pieces as well into the broader ecosystem of the value chain of solid waste. And in certain parts, you can be fairly systematic. So treatment oftentimes has a private financing solution if the right legal and regulatory environment are there. But in other parts of the value chain, sometimes these need to be publicly supported. And in fact, there's many times strong public subsidies that are supporting the overall operation of the system. because where I sit right now in Vietnam, the government has a desire to move forward in a purely privately operated and financed system. And that's just not necessarily realistic when we consider that $4 of expense are leading to $1 in revenue. And so taking a step back and figuring out how the capital comes in and how the systems are managed and financed on the operational basis is also important. So these are the three areas I think that we within the World Bank can provide support to our clients. The system-wide approach in understanding the roles, actors, institutions involved, addressing the environmental and social challenges, which are often quite difficult, and thinking smart about financing structures to be able to deliver the most attractive structure to city or subnational governments. So I think with those comments, I would just like to conclude with the point that this is a space that will continue to become more and more important as waste accumulation grows, as impacts of climate grows. So it's important for all of us to work together, to learn from one another, and to try to make progress in this really international challenge that we're all facing. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for extracting some key lessons from our discussions and for these closing reflections. Today, we have learned about Japanese and other good and emerging practices in energy efficient solid waste management, how these initiatives contribute to the development of low carbon cities. Once again, I would like to thank our speakers and discussants for sharing these insights with us. With this, we conclude this event. And remember, this is just the second event in our knowledge sharing series of low carbon and climate smart cities. Stay tuned for our future events as we continue to explore the path toward low carbon cities from a variety of angles. The next event of this series will focus on low carbon transportation. We will have Japanese and international experts introducing the approaches and key elements of climate smart transportation system. This next event will take place in September. More details will be shared by emails and posted on TDLC webpage, so please stay tuned. Let me finish with a big thank you to all of you, our participants, for joining us for this conversation. TDLC organizes events on a wide range of urban development topics, so if you are looking to learn more, please visit our website or SNS channels in Facebook and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye.